Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irarangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere aki nei, the COVID traffic light is green for go this Friday, but right now nobody gets beyond orange. Most of the North Island will be painted red, including Auckland, Gisborne, Northland and Rotorua districts. Wellington and the entire South Island carrot coloured. The settings will be reviewed in 2 weeks, so can we all bask in the golden orange glow by Christmas? The Deputy Prime Minister joins us and we go live to the South Island's west coast, Tairawhiti and Northland for reaction. The big music festival that's hit a sour note with local iwi, Waitangata Whenua, want Rhythm and Vines cancelled, and weary lab workers battling COVID in a back room. Don't forget, you can catch us live on Sky Channel 83.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, I'm Evie Ashton. The Prime Minister says it is unlikely any part of the country will move into green in the new traffic light systems before the new year. Northland, Auckland, Taupo and Rotorua Lakes districts, Kawerau, Whakatane or Pōtiki, Gisborne, Wairua, Rangitike, Whanganui and Ruapehu districts will enter the traffic light system on red on Friday. The rest of the North Island and the entire South Island will go into orange. Jacinda Ardern says the current settings will be in place for the next 2 weeks.
Cabinet will review settings again and provide an update before the summer break on Monday the 13th of December. We'll then hold for roughly a month to allow us to see the impact of the shift and allow the settings to bed in. They'll then be reviewed again in the week of Monday the 17th of January.
Jacinda Ardern says settings will then be reviewed every 2 weeks. The Police Commissioner has described his shock when he heard officers had been injured in a West Auckland shooting. The Armed Offenders Squad shot a man dead in Danube Lane in Glen Eden this morning. The gunman had shot and injured 3 officers who are now in hospital, one with serious injuries. Andrew Costa says officers dealt with a difficult situation professionally.
It's the worst thing that you can have in my position, to get that notification that officers have been injured. When I heard that multiple officers had been shot, my heart sank.
Andrew Costa says it's too early to say whether the incident was gang-related. The President of the European Commission says the world is in a race against time to tackle the new Omicron COVID variant. Major travel destinations, including the EU, Japan, the United States and Australia, are restricting travel. Ursula von der Leyen says vaccine producers need at least 2 weeks to assess whether they need to adapt their vaccines. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, says there are no cases of the Omicron variant in New Zealand, but she says it is a reminder of the risk we still face at the border. Political novice Chris Luxon heads into tomorrow's caucus vote as odds-on favourite to take the National Party leadership. RNZ understands it's a 2-horse race between the MP for Botany and former leader Simon Bridges, but support for Mr Luxon is firming. Here's our political editor Jane Patterson.
The position was vacated in a dramatic fashion last week after then-leader Judith Collins tried to demote Mr Bridges for lewd comments made about 5 years ago. Soon after, she lost a vote of no confidence and the race for her job began. One view coming out of the caucus is the need for a fresh start rather than taking a second chance on a former leader. It's also thought by some Mr Luxon may have a better chance at uniting the bitterly divided MPs. National MPs will return to Parliament tomorrow for a special caucus at 3 o'clock.
Shoppers can expect to see some gaps on the shelves at Countdown supermarkets over the coming days as work continues to restock after 3 days of strike action. Workers at Countdown's Auckland distribution centres walked off the job last week, demanding a wage increase of 5% in line with the rising cost of living. An agreement was reached on Friday night. A Countdown spokesperson says there may still be some product shortages over the coming days as they work to fill the shelves again. And the local market has recovered from its early trading losses as global markets fall in reaction to the emergence of the Omicron coronavirus strain. The NZX benchmark top 50 index opened down 1.1%, hitting a 5-month low, but has recovered through the day to end down just 0.75%. The recovery has been led by Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, which continues to benefit from ongoing global demand for its acute respiratory equipment, while travel and tourism-related stocks have been hardest hit. Asian markets also regained composure as investors settle in for a few weeks of uncertainty on whether the Omicron variant derails the global economic recovery. It's 4 minutes past 5, and now to sport. And the Black Caps are facing an uphill task to record what would be an historic win on day 5 of the first cricket test against India. Needing 284 to win in Kampur, New Zealand resumed their chase a short time ago at 4-for-1 in their second innings. No visiting team has ever chased more than 284 to win a test match in India, who have lost just 4 tests at home in the past decade. The Black Caps have just 2 test wins in India, the last coming 33 years ago. The Silver Ferns defender Jane Watson is set to miss next year's Commonwealth Games after announcing she's expecting her first child. The 31-year-old, who has 52 caps for the national netball side, has posted the news on social media. Watson won't be available for the Birmingham Games starting late July and will also miss next year's ANZ Premiership. A national training camp is being held in Wellington next month. And Chelsea's lead at the top of football's English Premier League has been cut to just 1 point after they were held to a 1-1 draw at home by Manchester United. Manchester City moved into second with a 2-1 win over West Ham. Chelsea have 30 points from 13 games, with City on 29 and Liverpool a further point back. Elsewhere, Leicester City beat Watford 4-2 in a match marred by heavy snow. Brentford beat Everton 1-0, while Tottenham Hotspur's game at Burnley was postponed after heavy snow made the pitch unplayable. And that's the news.
A COVID variant has the world on alert.
We need to buy time, see what happens on the global stage and make decisions that are appropriate. Putting the border on high alert is buying us time.
Will it shelve our international travel?
We've asked travellers to be really thoughtful about their travel. We will always take those steps which are precautionary.
Why not stay home and enjoy some local cuisine?
You soon got to learn to eat the frankfurter first and then pick up your bun, dunk it in water and just munch away like a mouse eating corn.
Bon appetit. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel fine apart from isolated afternoon showers inland. Waikato, Waitomo, Taumarunui, Taupo and Bay of Plenty. Mainly fine today, rain at times tomorrow. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay fine today apart from isolated afternoon showers. Rain developing tomorrow with possible thunderstorms from afternoon. Taranaki and Taihape to Wellington also Wairarapa. Mostly cloudy, areas of drizzle turning to rain tomorrow. Marlborough, Nelson and Buller, cloudy periods, a few showers, especially inland. Canterbury Coast and Plains, fine today apart from areas of low cloud. Cloudy tomorrow with isolated showers. Canterbury, High Country, Otago, Southland, Westland and Fiordland, mainly fine, cloud increasing about eastern Otago and Southland tomorrow with isolated showers. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, a few showers this evening. RNZ National at 7 minutes past 5.
Kia ora rā, iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. It's not quite a Christmas light ceremony, but it's the COVID equivalent. The new traffic light system will light up orange across most of the country on Friday, with just Auckland and 10 other North Island regions starting at red. Then Northland, Taupo, Rotorua, Kawerau, Whakatane, Apotiki, Gisborne, Wairoa, Rangatike, Whanganui and Ruapehu. The rest of the country, including the whole of the South Island, will begin at the orange traffic light setting. Nowhere starts at green and nowhere will go green until at least after the summer holidays. Jacinda Ardern says Cabinet is taking a cautious approach.
At orange, the big change here for parts of the country that will enter into this setting is that for the vaccinated and where vaccine passes are used, there are no gathering limits. People can gather again safely. At red, it will feel a lot like level 2. Your vaccine pass lets you go everywhere, but number limits of 100 will apply to most activities. And importantly, because I know this is a question many Aucklanders have, you can now see family and friends again in their homes and use the bathroom inside. Luxury.
Cabinet will review the settings in 2 weeks' time on Monday, December the 13th. And joining me now is Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson. Tēnā koe, Minister.
Kia ora, Lisa.
What vaccination rate did you use to determine the orange setting specifically?
So there wasn't a specific vaccination rate used. We looked at vaccination rates across New Zealand, along with other issues, including the volume of people that might be moving around during the summer break, health system-related issues, and so on. And so it wasn't a specific rate. Having said that, most people will be able to see that the areas where we have kept into the red area, into the red level, are ones where vaccination rates, generally speaking, are lower. There's one or two minor exceptions to that, particularly if you're trying to compare perhaps the west coast of the South Island with the Rangitikei district, but there are quite different circumstances that play there. So I don't think it'll be unexpected to the people in these regions, the areas where not only are the vaccination rates lower, but we've signalled that we want to see them lift.
So most zones in red are under 80% vaccinated and most zones in orange are 80% plus. Would that be a fair assessment?
That happens to be factually true, yes, but I'm not saying that 80% is a trigger.
Okay, so where's the reward for Auckland, right? The three DHBs, 86%, 87%, 91%, and you're looking at Taranaki, which has got only an 80% vaccination rate, and they're better off in terms of their traffic light setting.
Yeah, well, first things first, which is that when Auckland does go into the red level on Friday, it will feel quite different to what they've been through. It's akin to level 2, if you're using vaccination certificates. And obviously we have a significant outbreak in Auckland, and therefore that is part of our thinking to see how that outbreak goes. We appear to have plateaued in the cases, but we want to lock in those gains. And so it's not just the vaccination rate, but equally, while level red has some restrictions in it, it will certainly feel significantly freer than what Auckland's been through recently.
Can Auckland realistically be orange before Christmas?
Well, we're not ruling that out, but we have a reassessment on the 13th of December, and we'll take a look and see where Auckland is at. Obviously, with vaccination rates, as you're indicating, they've gone incredibly well, and we want to see all of the second doses that people need to happen. And then we'll be looking at the state of the outbreak in Auckland, particularly at that point. So that's our check-in, and we'll make that announcement when we get
where
there.
would case numbers need to be? Because as you've identified, one of the highest vaccination rates, we know that there's still space in ICU and hospital services. So case numbers seem to be the sticking point. What level do they need to get down to make you comfortable for orange?
And again, we haven't specified that, and we will reassess.
So how do we know in Auckland if we're any closer? Do you see what I mean? We don't actually have a checklist that we can go through and say, OK, we've done this, this and this, so we get orange.
Yeah, and Aucklanders have done incredibly well here, but we are carefully stepping through this. There is still a significant outbreak in Auckland, and we'll look at all the factors, the health system, as you mentioned, the number of cases, the rates of vaccinations and second doses. So I'm not going to put a specific number on it. Red will be a significant step forward for Aucklanders, and then there'll be 10 days or 11 days of that and a reassessment, and we'll see where we are at that point.
Why does the west coast of the South Island get to be in orange when they're only 77% dosed? Why don't you keep them in red and give them an incentive to get moving?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously on the West Coast we're talking about a very small number in real number terms. I think it's around about 500 people left to go to get to the 90% first dose.
But it's all relative when you're dealing in percentages, isn't it?
It is, but as I say, also there are other factors at play here. There is not so much through traffic down on the west coast of the South Island. It obviously has a completely different situation in terms of case numbers and so on. And so we made the judgment that it could go with the rest of the South Island and move through to the orange level. I do think it's really important, Lisa, to understand that the red level, while it has some restrictions around gathering size in particular, does still offer people the ability to be able to do most of the things that they would be wanting to do over the summer period.
The Auckland border opens up on the 15th of December. Why bother having people in different regions and different colours when we're all going to be mixing and mingling?
Well, again, because should there be outbreaks, things like gathering restrictions, as they have throughout the pandemic, are helpful to limiting the spread of the virus. And, that's why we don't have those big mass events in areas where we feel that, the circumstances don't warrant going into orange.
So what is R&V going to cost the taxpayer?
Well, obviously R&V organisers have got to make their own decisions about what they do. If they do choose to not go ahead with it at this point.
Well, they can't go ahead unless they're in orange, right? So
correct.
That's the scenario. At the moment, their district is in red, and they are sitting at 74% second doses. So, odds on, what's the likelihood that they're going to get to orange?
Well, again, those are not decisions that we've made today. But if I was just going to finish the answer, that obviously if there are deadlines that Rhythm and Vines have got, that's why the event support system was set up for costs that they can't get back. And obviously I don't know what those costs would be at the moment, but the scheme was designed to support people in the circumstances they're in.
Ballpark, you must have a bit of an idea of how much you're up for if R&V doesn't go ahead. What is it?
No, I don't have those numbers, Lisa. We set the scheme
But it'd be millions, wouldn't it?
We set the scheme up on a criteria basis, so I don't have the dollar figure.
Okay, so given the vaccination rates for Tairawhiti at the time this insurance policy was announced, was the gamble really worth it? Because the odds were against you.
Well, it's not a gamble. It's a matter of making sure that we provide support to people in an environment of uncertainty like this. The event sector and us have been talking for some time about what we could do to enable people to be able to carry on with their planning when they were feeling so uncertain, with some security that some of their costs that they couldn't avoid if they had to cancel were met. And so it's not a matter of a gamble. It was a scheme we designed to make sure that we could provide support to the event sector.
Just so we know, over Christmas, what could prompt a localised lockdown, which is still on the cards?
Well, it is, although, as we've tried to reinforce, we don't see that as particularly likely. A localised lockdown would be if we had an outbreak which we simply felt we could not control in an area. We believe that the settings we've got act as a good control, but we do have to have a backstop. One thing to remember about them is that they would be very much localised in the sense that they would be around a particular area where there was a particular outbreak that we didn't feel we could control. But as I say, they're well down our list of the way that we'll be managing things.
Understand, but given the fact that people will be moving around the country, may not be at home, are you going to give people enough time to get home if you were going to have to go into a localised lockdown?
Yeah, look, as we have done in the past, I'm sure we'll manage that. We've done that with when we've had other forms of lockdown. Slightly different situation if you find yourself in a situation where you've got the virus yourself, and there are obviously public health guidance about staying in place and so on, if that is the right health setting. But in terms of being able to travel and so on, bear in mind there are currently no borders per se. If a localised lockdown were to occur, I'm sure we'd deal with it the way we have lockdowns in the past.
Thanks for joining us this evening. That is Grant Robertson, the Deputy Prime Minister. Ho mai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback. Nō reira anei na kaupapa mo te hōtaka nei. What do you make of your region's rating? What is it? Do you think it's fair? How should this work? There is a review 2 weeks before Christmas. Pātui mai, text me 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or send us an email, checkpoints@rnz.co.nz. It is 17 minutes past 5. Kia ora rawatu mo te whakarongo mai e haere nei. Coming up, we'll have more on the new COVID variant spreading across the world. For the whole of the South Island, it's straight to orange zone. So that means no gathering limits for hospitality, weddings, funerals, close contact businesses and gyms, as long as the vaccine certificate is being used. Our reporter Samantha G is on the West Coast and joins us now from Blackball. So Samantha, what's the deal there?
So kia ora, Lisa. Along with the rest of the South Island, the West Coast is being moved to orange from the end of this week. Now, there's been some frustration here as there have been no cases of COVID on the West Coast, but it has been the region with the slowest uptake of the vaccine in the South Island. Just 79% of the region are fully vaccinated, and from tonight, a volunteer fire brigade in Anangahua, which is not too far from here, will be unable to operate as they don't have enough fully vaccinated crew. So I'm here with Cynthia from formerly the Blackball Hilton. Cynthia, how do you think people here will respond to the news that the region's moving to orange?
I think they'll be disappointed because there's been no cases on the West Coast, and they were really quite hopeful that we'd move to level green at the get-go.
And, I mean, how do you think it will impact business at the pub having this sort of different set of restrictions now?
The restrictions are always difficult, and I've got big concerns about the fact that there are people in the community that this is their hub, this is the place that they come to, and all of a sudden they're being excluded because they're not vaccinated, and we've got to follow a regime that is being forced upon us, really.
And in terms of those new restrictions, what does it mean for you here to have to be checking vaccine passes? How will that change things?
Well, when you've got people coming into the hotel, you can check their age quite quickly with a visual check. It's not so easy to do that with a vaccination check. So it is putting more strain on the staff because they are actually having to ask people to produce proof that they're allowed on the premises, and that's creating a difficulty.
And I mean, it's coming into your busy season over summer, isn't it? So is it going to mean that you need more staff or that things have to change in order to be able to check vaccine passes?
I'm really hopeful that the public are actually going to take it on board and produce their passes voluntarily as they enter premises rather than actually waiting for staff to actually make them do it. And I hope that has less impact on the amount of staff that we actually have to have on.
And I mean, do you think the government has made the requirements for this move into orange clear? Do you know what needs to be done for your business moving forward?
I've had a lot of assistance from Hospitality New Zealand to clarify that. I don't think the position has been made as clear as it could have been by the government. They may think that it's clear because they're talking about it each and every day to each other, but out in the population with the businesses, it doesn't seem to be having the clarity that we would like.
And I think you said to me before, you know, pubs like this in small communities, really important social hubs for people. It's where they gather, it's where they come together. Is it going to be tough to have to say no to people at the door that aren't vaccinated?
That's going to be really, really upsetting, and we're going to work as closely as we can with those people to try and get them to get their vaccination so that they can come on board. But it is going to be really, really hard for us to make those decisions.
Yes, so businesses here on the coast will have until Friday to prepare for these new restrictions in the orange setting. So, yeah, back to you in the studio, Lisa.
Thanks, Samantha. That's Samantha G, who was on the West Coast there, joining us from Blackball. The Rhythm and Vines Festival has hit a bit of a sour note with local iwi, who are calling for the festival to be canned due to COVID concerns. The festival that usually kicks off on the 28th of December is already hanging in the balance, with the Gisborne district on red until at least the middle of next month. Regardless, a collective of local iwi believes the threat posed by about 25,000 people pouring into the region for the three-day festival is simply too high. Ko taku manuhiri anai nei, ko Penny Brown, who is the chair of Te Aitanga a Mahaki, joins me now. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Lisa.
Penny, what is your position on Rhythm and Vines?
Lisa, we've collected together as the iwi chairs for Tairāwhiti, as you said, Ngāti Paraorongo Whakata, Ngāi Tā Manuhiri and Te Aitanga Mahaki. And yes, we've had a meeting with the Live Nation owners of Rhythm and Vines, and we've asked them that the festival does not take place, that it be postponed or moved.
So obviously you're red at the moment in your district, so it couldn't happen now, but they get a reassessment in 2 weeks. So regardless of what level you are at, you would like them to can it for this year. Why?
Yes, regardless of what colour, we think that the festival coming at this difficult time will just put too much strain on an already busy number of organisations in our area.
So how have they reacted to that?
They perhaps the meeting was very cordial. They're wanting to still talk to us after they understand the various traffic light levels, and they were neither overbearing about that it must happen and it must go ahead, and they were willing to listen to our point of view.
But they haven't given you an undertaking that they will cancel it?
They haven't given that undertaking, no.
So have you suggested that they move it to another district, and have they investigated that?
They indicated to us that they had surveyed other options, and they were finding that the uniqueness of the site found was difficult for them to seek an alternative site.
So at Orange, people would have to be double vaccinated. So that's some protection. What do you know about people asking for refunds because they're not vaccinated and don't want to be vaccinated to come to the festival?
Only what I'm reading in the papers and that a number of people have asked for refunds. But I think it's not only the festival attendees, it's also the workforce that will need to be double vaxxed as well.
In terms of the workforce, are people in the district going to want to work at Rhythm and Vines?
There is some hesitancy, and I think Tairāwhiti is a region where there are more jobs than there are people, and everybody is really quite busy with a lot of vaccination work and everything, and then to suddenly have to get behind this 3-day festival is just a step too far for everyone.
So I know you've had this meeting and you say it was a cordial meeting, but have the organisers of the festival consulted, do you think, widely enough with iwi in the lead up to this?
The short answer to that one is no, they haven't. But it is difficult times, and I would have thought that they may have had an earlier indication of the difficulties that they were facing, and possibly have made a decision a long time ago.
The government believes that at Orange it is safe to have significant gatherings if you use a vaccine certificate. Why do you not agree with that?
We don't disagree with the traffic light system that they're employing to work for normal business as usual. Tairawhiti just wonders, why do we have to be the first place where 25,000 people meet for 3 days? There are plenty of orange places that they could go to, as you said, and we're in red. We believe we'll still be in red till the end of January and the beginning of February. We do need time to just work slowly with our vaccine hesitant numbers to get us up to the 90% as well.
So do you feel this would be an experiment that you don't really want to be a part of?
No, it's a heck of a drain on the system when there's no COVID. It's a lot to expect the local DHB. It sets itself up for normal festival goers. City Council have a lot to do in a normal year to meet the requirements of Rhythm and Vines, and we're entering all of that against the backdrop of COVID-19 as well.
Thank you for joining us this evening, Ngā mihi. That's Penny Brown, the chair of Te Aitanga, Mahaki, who is, well, they're one of the iwi in the district where Rhythm and Vines is being held. They'd prefer it if they didn't come this summer, regardless of what level setting the region is in. It is 26 minutes past 5. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. 4 police officers are in hospital after 2 separate events within 24 hours in Auckland. Police shot and killed a man in West Auckland after he opened fire on them and injured 3 officers. Last night, an officer was seriously injured after being hit by a car while putting down spikes to stop it. The police commissioner says it's been a challenging time for officers, especially in Auckland, but says they're very much in control. Jordan Bond and camera operator Marika Habazi have the story.
A suburban street, 8:30 on a Monday morning. The sound of gunshots ring out as a helicopter flies overhead. On the side of the road, a group of armed police stand braced at the entrance to a property. Then, more gunshots.
I think one of the police has been injured.
That was from a video taken by a witness on Danube Lane in Glen Eden. For over half an hour before those gunshots, the highly trained armed offenders squad tried to negotiate with the man to drop his weapon. He didn't, instead shooting at police before officers fired back and shot him dead. Police Commissioner Andrew Costa says he could not ask for more in the way officers dealt with the situation.
It's far too early to say what learnings might come out of the reviews that will take place. But on the face of it, our police staff engaged professionally. They were very patient in the way they negotiated with this man, and they effectively resolved the situation when it broke down. I couldn't ask for more than that.
Andrew Costa says there's so far nothing to indicate this was gang-related after a few recent incidents in West Auckland. Whatever it is, it's too much for some locals. This woman lives nearby and her mother lives even closer on Danube Lane itself.
Too close to home, it's too close. It's going on too often. Every second day there's something about a shooting or a stabbing or something. It's too much. I mean, we just want to get the hell out of Auckland.
The Union for Police Officers says gun violence is now a daily occurrence and the job increasingly risky. The Vice President of the Police Association, Mike McRandall, says this incident is a tragedy all round, both for the family of the man killed and the officers and their families. He says gun violence is increasingly common. Data suggests an average of 3 firearm incidents every day this year in Auckland alone.
There are incidents daily. Innocent members of the public have been caught up in the gun violence. Some of that can be, inter-gang type warfare sort of situation. It's just tragic, and we're witnessing a policing environment that is progressively more and more dangerous.
He says with this risk, it's no surprise to the association that the majority of its frontline members think they should be armed.
Well, you can't call anything routine in modern policing these days. One of the most risky situations you go or get involved in every day. Police all around New Zealand are stopping vehicles for various reasons, but you just don't know what you're going to potentially get confronted with, and we're seeing so many firearms.
The local Auckland councillor, Linda Cooper, says the council supports the police with whatever they need as they bravely do a risky job. She's concerned with incidents so close to home.
I mean, that would worry anybody, but I think it's not just in West Auckland, is it? Things are happening on the North Shore and the South Auckland. And I mean, I think everybody's worried about that. But I think at the moment this is something that the police need to deal with, and they need to deal with it very effectively.
The police are trialling what they call a tactical response model, which includes more training for officers in high-risk situations. 2 districts, Northland and Central, will have a full trial of the model, while counties Manukau and Waikato will test a pared-back version. The Commissioner reiterated earlier this month the New Zealand Police will remain a generally unarmed force.
And if you were listening to that on radio, the video from Marika and Jordan will go up on our Facebook page. Do check it out. E te iwi e haere nei e a checkpoint. We head to Northland and Tairāwhiti as they prepare for the red light. The forgotten team of 4,000, the lab workers tirelessly working to turn around COVID tests. Homai o whakaaro, we'd love your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. Don't forget you can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoints@rnz.co.nz. It is time now for the headlines. Anei a iwi mina pita pita kōrero.
The new traffic light system replacing alert levels will come into force on Friday with the following regions at red: Northland, Auckland, Taupo and Rotorua Lakes, Kawerau, Whakatane or Pōtiki, Gisborne, Wairoa, Rangitike, Whanganui and Ruapehu districts. The rest of the North Island will be at orange, as will the whole of the South Island. The Deputy Prime Minister, Grant Robertson, has told Checkpoint cases appear to have plateaued in Auckland, but the government wants to lock in those gains. He says under red, Aucklanders with vaccine certificates will have freedoms similar to Alert Level 2. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, says no region will move to green before January the 17th. She says before making any changes, Cabinet will weigh up several factors, including transmission of the virus, pressure on contact tracing and health systems, and vaccine rates. Cabinet will review the settings on December the 13th, then again on January the 17th, and every fortnight after that. The government has also announced a new transition payment of up to $24,000 for businesses, particularly those in Auckland, Waikato and Northland. The one-off payment through the resurgence support criteria will kick in from December the 10th. The Finance Minister says more targeted support will be considered once the traffic light system beds in. The Police Commissioner says this morning's fatal shooting in West Auckland is subject to several reviews, but it appears police acted correctly. Andrew Costa says the Armed Offenders Squad was very patient with the gunman, but he shot 3 officers before the police returned fire and shot him dead. 3 police officers are now in hospital, and one with serious injuries is undergoing surgery. And the local market has recovered from its early trading losses as global markets fall in reaction to the Omicron coronavirus strain. The NZX benchmark top 50 index opened down 1.1%, hitting a 5-month low, but has recovered to end down just 0.75%. Those are the headlines. Our next news update is at 6.
Kia ora rā e ho, nau mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei, ko taku hoa e nai nei, ko Nona Peltier, who's here to talk business. Okay, Nona, aged care service provider, this is Oceania Healthcare, has reported a strong lift in first half profit. What's the reason behind all of that?
Well, early in the first half of their financial year, they saw a demand for independent living apartments and villas, and that was prior to the lockdowns. After the lockdowns, not so much, especially in the the Auckland region. And the company also found that they had to incur additional direct costs as a result of the COVID infection. And so that's protection and those kinds of things. But also indirect costs. For example, they had really struggled with their building program. That was just, for example, having it closed down for a while and then getting the right labor in place to make it happen. However, the company thinks that the second half is going to be maybe better. So traditionally, the summer season is quiet for the market because people go on holidays and so on. But because of the situation that's ongoing, they're expecting that there'll be more activity over December and January than they've seen in the past. So they're fairly optimistic about the second half. And certainly the market seemed to like that because despite what we heard just a few moments ago, their share price ended steady, unchanged.
Okay, so higher wage costs and the recent COVID-19 lockdown have also weighed on Radius Care's half-year profit. What are the numbers there?
Well, this is another aged care operator. So they did not fare as well as Oceania Health, and that's because it's a much smaller business. Basically, their wage bill, it rose 10% over the 6-month period. And their other expenses, many of those related to COVID, rose 20%. Now, we've heard this from other companies as well about the costs of COVID. Certainly, it's a difficult period for all types of industries, including the aged care sector. But in this case, the company's share price fell, I think, about 5%. And that's basically what we've been seeing in our market across today. Look, there was the concern about the spread of this new variant is causing the market to be upset everywhere. We've seen that in our region again. So when you think that the NZX Top 50 Index, it just fell 0.75% today. That's a 97-point drop to 12,532. Well, all I can say is it could have been much worse because when we opened up, we were down 1.1%. And the New Zealand dollar, it's doing pretty well. It's steady at 68.3 US cents, 95.6 Australian and 51.3 pence.
Thanks, Nona. Ka kite, Nona Peltier there with Business News. Let's get some more reaction to the traffic light decision now. Northland will be in red from Friday, with the government saying those extra protections are needed to keep COVID at bay. The region has 76% of its population fully vaccinated and just 63% of Māori. Whangarei Mayor Cheryl Mai joins me now. Kia ora, Cheryl.
Kia ora, Lisa.
How do you feel about red?
We've painted the town red before for the Rugby World Cup, actually, which was a joyous time. It's probably not the best reason to be painting it red now.
So what does it actually mean for your Christmas and your summer?
Unfortunately, with the red traffic light coding, it means things like Christmas parades are definitely gone. Gatherings of more than 100 people are just off the radar. So that's a bit sad because we like to gather in large gatherings and actually celebrate the joy of a summer season. So that's unfortunate. However, the good thing is that come the 15th of December, that border between Auckland and Northland sort of dissipates. There will still be checks to make sure that people have their vaccine pass or have had a negative test within 72 hours. But that does expose us to risk, and the low vaccination rate is the major thing that we're really worried about.
So even though it has some business downsides, are you relatively happy to be in red for safety reasons?
I think the fact that we're in good company with a lot of other districts in the North Island, the protection framework is there for a reason, and we accept that, and we accept the science behind it. However, we do need to be moving down the hierarchy, orange and eventually green, with the vaccination rates up, because we absolutely always want to have our people safe, but we've got businesses who will hurt by having to put in place these new COVID protection framework regime.
Because the government has said several times today that red, well, it's basically the same as level 2. Do you buy that?
No, it's quite different, and we're analysing all of the changes. We've been in that privileged position of alert level 2 and looking at the changes that the traffic light system brings, and a lot of that is around restricting numbers into various events, and that is definitely changed. for us.
Yeah, and I know you're analysing it. So do you have any idea what the difference in revenue is from alert level 2 to being in a red colour? Do you know what the financial loss is? Do you have any idea?
That's a great question, and I'm sure that there will be some very clever economists who will be number crunching as we speak. I don't have that to hand.
Okay, so vaccination certificates, right? You're going to have to show them. And I just wonder, how do you think that's going to fly in your neck of the woods where someone might have been going to the same pub for 50 years and now they need to show a certificate? Are sometimes people going to be let in with a nudge and a wink, do you think?
I jolly well hope not. I think it is actually really important that with the My Vaccine Pass that we encourage people to download it, to have it printed. Our libraries will help people. That's the most important thing. So if you've had the vaccinations, get that pass and that will be your key to the door. If people have not been vaccinated and they are restricted entry, then that's for the right reasons. And yes, there will be some grumpy people, but boy, oh boy, I do trust that there won't be the nudge and a wink and she'll be right attitude.
So 76% of the population fully vaccinated in Northland, right? And you're hoping to get to orange. Are you clear about what it is exactly that you have to do to get there? Because it's not just the vaccination rate.
The vaccination rates are definitely one of the criteria. The capability of our medical care is another factor that's been taken into account. So there will be some other criteria, but really vaccination is number one.
So do you reckon you can get to orange by Christmas, or it's out of your reach?
Out of our reach. Ridiculous to even think that we'd be changing colour before Christmas.
Okay, so then the next review is mid-January. Can you get there by mid-January?
That's our hope, and I think when the vaccine pass requirement really comes into effect and people start seeing the restrictions that it creates on their lifestyle, that hopefully the people who've just been maybe I will, maybe I won't, maybe that will tip them over the edge and get them to a vaccination queue, and that's where we want them.
Cheryl, you mentioned before how the border around Auckland, it disappears on the 15th, right? And there'll be a few Aucklanders heading your way. Have you had conversations with the police and anyone else who's going to be involved in the checks? And are you confident that they're going to be solid enough for your liking?
We're in regular contact and we work really collectively and collaboratively in the north, as do other regions. The area commander, in fact, I was just on a call with them, listening to what their plans are to be put in place. Coming through the summer season, of course, you've got Christmas and New Year and the requirements for them operationally. It will put a lot of stress and strain onto our police force. So we want to ensure that their job is made easier by ensuring that when people are travelling, they're travelling with the correct documentation.
Good to talk to you, Cheryl. That's Cheryl Mai, who's the Mayor of Whangarei. Tairawhiti will go red too on Friday, one of several North Island regions to head into the tightest restrictions in the traffic light framework. And our reporter, Tom Kitchen, joins me now from Gisborne. So, Tom, what do people there think of all of this?
Kia ora, Lisa. Well, firstly, look at this weather. I can see why Aucklanders would want to come down here. It's an absolute stellar day here in Taupo. The sun is shining a lot. It's great. Well, to answer your question about how people think or what people think about the red light, well, I've just been talking to people on the street. A lot of them are still getting the hang of what the red light will actually mean. Most people I talked to said they were vaccinated. The big thing is, though, R&V. Most people I spoke to, if not all the people, don't want it to go ahead.
So, Tom, well, what is it actually going to mean for the region? Because Rhythm and Vines, right? That's that's the big event there of the summer, and it's in jeopardy.
It is absolutely in jeopardy, and a lot of the locals here don't want it to actually happen, as I said. But it won't be able to go ahead under red. That is the thing, because the vaccination rates here are low. I mean, it's 75% second dose. That's the lowest in the country in terms of vaccination rates. So it could go ahead under orange, and it's really up to the program or the organisers of R&V if it will go ahead. They didn't want to talk to us today. We approached them for comment, but they didn't want to have a chat. But anyway, it's up to them whether it will go ahead under orange. I just spoke to the Mayor as well. She didn't really want to comment as to whether she thought R&V should go ahead or not. She says it's up to the organisers.
Good to talk to you, Tom, and it does look like a smashing day there. Wow. Thanks for joining us, Tom. That is Tom from Gisborne. He was live there in Tairāwhiti. It is almost 5:45. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Hey, Muriaki ina pitapita kōrero. After the news at 6, red is a handbrake on bigger summer events or a packed pub. So what does that mean for the regions? The Omicron COVID variant is spreading across the world, and with it, fear of a major step back in the pandemic. More than a dozen people now have it in the Netherlands, 8 in France, 3 in the UK, and at least 3 in Australia. Yet it's still unknown how dangerous the variant, first discovered in South Africa, really is. Max Toll has more.
We are now in a race against time.
Dozens of countries are urgently changing their travel restrictions and banning people from southern Africa. And more countries could be added to Australia's list, says Health Minister Greg Hunt.
Pretty simple. If further actions are required, further actions will be taken.
And it could go beyond that. Wednesday in Australia, for instance, is meant to herald the return of skilled migrants and international students. But the government is re-evaluating.
It could be more transmissible, but we also know that it's proving to be less severe.
Scientists around the world are trying to figure out just how transmissible and dangerous Omicron is. Medical experts in the US have told the president he'll have to wait 2 to 3 weeks for a report on just how deadly it might be. But like Scott Morrison, Dr. Francis Collins of the National Institutes of Health is trying to allay fears.
There's even a bit of a report from South Africa that maybe people with this are milder than the usual case, but they're mostly young people who have mild illness anyways. We do think it's more contagious when you look at how rapidly it's spread through multiple districts in South Africa.
The message in New Zealand is that it's too soon to panic. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern believes we are well equipped should Omicron make it to our shores.
Quite early days, all travellers that come in are coming into our facilities, and if they test positive, we sequence that. We'll know whether or not they're positive for this particular variant. Then we're confident at this stage that the settings are where they need to be.
As for South Africa, where the variant was first discovered, its president has hit out at countries banning South Africans. Cyril Ramaphosa calling it Afrophobia. Yet, having seen up close just how quickly Omicron spreads, he's not very optimistic.
If cases continue to climb, we can expect to enter a fourth wave of infections within the next few weeks, if not sooner. This should not come as a surprise. Epidemiologists and disease modelers have told us that we should expect a fourth wave in early December.
The president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, says world leaders are urgently speaking with vaccine producers to see whether they need to return to the labs.
We know not all about this variant, but it is a variant of concern. And the scientists and manufacturers need 2 to 3 weeks to have a full picture about the quality of the mutations of this Omicron variant.
An urgent virtual meeting of G7 health ministers to discuss Omicron will take place tonight.
Beleaguered and weary in the backroom fight against COVID. That's how the team of 4,000 lab workers is feeling after what's been described as a war-like onslaught for their services, according to their professional body. The New Zealand Institute of Medical Laboratory Science says the northern labs that have been in the thick of the Delta outbreak have been working around the clock with no respite. So what is summer going to bring? Well, joining me now is President Terry Taylor. Hi, Terry.
Kia ora, Lisa.
Give us your unvarnished version of this. How are these lab workers doing?
Not great. We've got to be honest here. Ever since the first Delta lockdown, way back in August, and I think that's the last time I spoke to you when we came out to our 3 millionth specimen, they've basically been working day and night, just putting through constant PCR tests as well as the other testing that they do. And just to put it in perspective, Lisa, when I talked to you 3 months ago, we did the 3 millionth test. We're just about at 5 million now. So we've done 2 million extra ones in those 3 months, as well as 12 million other tests. So these guys are really, really feeling the pinch up in that far north.
So they're knackered, Terry. to put it bluntly.
Pretty much. That's a good way of putting it. And the rest of us around the country are trying our best to help as well. So we're obviously stepping up and taking some of the load as it spreads around the country. And that is where some of the reasoning behind the 72-hour to 5-day turnaround is starting to happen, because the reality is we can't just click our fingers and send a sample from Dunedin to Auckland. It takes time to get down to these places for us to stand up and help them out. So that's just going to be a part of the reality of dealing with this outbreak.
So, Terry, are you saying that some of the lag in getting test results back is because tests are being sent en masse out of Auckland because there's so many of them and they have to be processed somewhere else?
Exactly. And the Waikato region as well. And it's just to help spread the load, because just remember, these guys are not just doing COVID testing, they're doing everything else as well. And we know that when lockdown restrictions get loosened, all the other testing requirements go through the roof when people start going back in to get their other tests that were delayed from the lockdown.
So is there an agreement with other laboratories outside of Auckland when we reach capacity in the super city? Is there someone that takes up the slack? Is there a sort of plan laid out for where those tests go? Or do people just have to negotiate with another lab to help them out?
It's pretty much done by the individual providers, Lisa, so that they actually determine that, so they move it within their different provider groups, and there's obviously also a fair bit of collaboration on the ground. I mean, we as practitioners know all the practitioners around New Zealand who are doing the same thing that we are, so there's a lot of that type of talk, and we will sort it out that way. And it is functioning at the moment, but it is creaking.
So what needs to happen then?
Clearly we've seen the big cash injection that got announced last week. The next phase that we want to see as a professional body and for the people on the ground is a national plan to take this forward through the Christmas, through when the borders the regional borders start opening up and COVID starts spreading around the country.
So what are you expecting, and the team of 4,000 who are working in these labs, what are you expecting as we move to the traffic light system and the country is more open? What does summer look like for you guys?
Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? It'll be very similar to last summer. There won't be any respite for our guys on the ground like there hasn't been for the last 20 months. And this is one group of health professionals that's really been hit hard by this pandemic as far as their role. And that's why I really like to just say, if everyone can just almost, I won't say give us a break, but just be very aware that these people have been working flat out for a very long period of time, and we haven't even got to the second half yet, so who knows what's going to happen when the extra time kicks in.
Can you guys cope? Have you got enough resources?
Well, it's touch and go. The problem is there's no ready supply of medical laboratory scientists anywhere in the world to just tap into, because guess what? We're all in the same boat. And it's just one of those things that the last 20-odd years of underfunding in pathology is coming back to really haunt us here.
So can you actually meet the 72-hour deadline?
I think so. In most cases, yes, we can, but there's always going to be outliers. And just be aware that people in the laboratories don't sit there and look at a sample all day and say, I better do that tomorrow. They do it now. It's just that the load is so big. Sometimes there will be outliers, and that's just the reality of dealing with a pandemic response when you get so many specimens turning up at once.
So are you expecting to be doing more tests over the summer than you are doing now, because people will be moving around?
Look, I would expect, currently at the moment we're around the 30 to 40,000 test mark. I can see us over the summer getting up to around about the 50 to 60,000 per day testing. I mean, we've got to look at the capacity. I mean, the labs are gearing up for it. They're getting a lot of equipment in. But as you can imagine, around the world, there's demand for all this equipment as well. So we are fighting those battles in the background logistically as well.
So worst case scenario, that's double the daily number of tests that you are doing at the moment. Will you have the same number of staff on? Are any people getting a holiday break, or how does it work?
Well, we're trying to, but it's just when the work's there, we've just got to put it through. I mean, this is our calling in a way. This is what we're trying to do. But it is hard, and it is really hard on the workforce. There wouldn't be too many days that I don't get a phone call from someone in the northern regions that's really struggling. And I think it is a worrying sign, and it's something that we really, really need to look at.
Do you need to bring in international workers?
Well, it's very difficult to look at it like that because it's not as simple as just bringing someone into a New Zealand environment and expecting them to work. I think the key is training some of our students that we have around and just making the effort to get more people trained quickly to handle the ends of the process that we don't need the real technical side.
Good to talk to you, Terry. That's Terry Taylor, who's from the New Zealand Institute of Medical Laboratory Science. And as you said there, potentially expecting the number of tests per day to double over the summer. In Switzerland, people have been voting in a referendum on the future of COVID certificates and the resulting restrictions to many public places. Early results suggest the proposal to scrap them has been defeated. COVID cases in Switzerland are rising sharply. The country currently has the lowest vaccination rate in Western Europe, with 65% fully jabbed. The BBC's Imogen Folks reports from Bern.
Perfect. No certificate, no ID, no entry. That's the sign blocking the door to a bar in the centre of Bern. It's not the warmest of welcomes, but manager Mike sees it as a big improvement after lockdown.
It allows us to go back to normal, some sort of pub normality, where people can mingle, walk around, they don't need the mask on, they can meet other people and actually socialise. So it's like much better pub feeling compared to last year.
Since September, the COVID certificate is obligatory to get into anything fun in Switzerland. Bars, cafes, the cinema, museums, football matches. Customers Tanya and Thomas think it's a good thing.
It makes us all safer here. I know everyone here is vaccinated or recovered or tested, and like that I can also go maybe with an older person from my family that is a bit at risk without them having to worry that they would get COVID. So I think it's a very good thing.
It's only takes 5 seconds, so it doesn't bother me at all, and I think that's good for the people and that's good for the businesses too, and that's why I think the certificate is a good thing.
Despite clear evidence the vaccine prevents serious illness and the fact the virus is spreading fast among young unvaccinated people, there are thousands without masks at this rally, from the far right, the far left and everything in between. Ask them why they're here and there's a common thread. They believe their government has overreached itself.
To protect the democracy of Switzerland. We are losing our freedom, we are losing our liberty.
We don't trust anymore.
The big people.
The big people.
You don't want the vaccine?
No, never ever. I think it's poison.
It's my body, it's my choice.
These are the people who gathered the signatures to force the referendum to get rid of the certificate. They've already managed to weaken the government they think is too powerful. COVID cases are rising exponentially, but unlike their colleagues in Germany and Austria, the Swiss government, desperate to keep the virus under control, but fearful of creating even more opposition, has shied away from new measures.
The Black Caps are facing an uphill battle to try to win their test against India in India. Clay Wilson joins me now. Clay, so you've had about, an hour's play already on day 5. How are things going?
Kia ora, Lisa. Well, I'm going to do my best not to put any kind of commentator's curse on things here, because the Black Caps have actually started pretty well here on this 5th and final day. They started the day at 4 for 1. Of course, that target 284, so still needing 280 runs today to win. Now, at the crease have been opener Tom Latham, and with him has been spin bowler Will Somerville. That's because New Zealand lost a wicket late yesterday, and he came in as a night watchman who essentially protects those other top-order batters. But Somerville, as a lower-order batsman, has actually been really impressive so far today. He's played very well in this first hour, hit 4 boundaries. He's moved through to 22 runs. Tom Latham, as usual, has been very, very steady. He's gone through to 15. So New Zealand are 41 for 1 with the first drinks break approaching here on this final day. Still a very long way to go, but with the likes of Kane Williamson, Ross Taylor, Henry Nicholls, of course, still to come, it's a pretty decent start for the Black Caps.
Yeah, so as you say, long way to go, but how difficult is the task that they could face in trying to win this?
Well, in short, it's incredibly difficult. In fact, even drawing this game and preventing India from winning is not going to be an easy task. As you well know, Lisa, we cricket lovers love a good statistic or historical fact, and there's some pretty good ones around just how heavily the odds are stacked against the Black Caps here. The easiest way to say it is the Indian cricket team are very good in test matches in India, especially over the past decade. They've won their last 11 test series at home and lost just 2 matches across those 11 series. When it comes to New Zealand, Zealand. New Zealand have played 34 total tests in India. They've won just 2 of those games, and the last of those was 33 years ago, way back in 1988. So as for the specifics of the target the Black Caps have, only one team, being India themselves, in the history of the game in India have ever successfully chased this target the Black Caps have, or more. In fact, only 6 teams have scored this much in the 4th innings of a test in India. So, needless to say, history's not with the Black Caps here, but of course this current New Zealand team have made something of a habit, really, of beating the odds in recent years. So still plenty of hope for the Kiwi cricket fans who are going to be glued to their TV screens tonight as this final day plays out. And on that note, Clay, it's a school night, so how late are we going to have to stay up? So these days play have been going through to midnight, sometimes a little bit later. So yeah, you're going to have to get some matchsticks out, get the cuppa on, and get a cup of tea going later at night to get you through, I think. Thanks, Clay. That's Clay Wilson there. And a lot of you getting in touch with your feedback on the traffic light system. Someone says Golden Bay's got about 68% double vaxxed, but Orange, and it's a summer holiday destination. And Gordon says it's precisely because it's a social hub that the Black Ball pub is a potential COVID-19 spreader. They need to keep their community safe by keeping unvaccinated people who could spread COVID-19 away. And this one from a listener, we're scratching our heads about it. Can anyone explain what the difference is between an event and a gathering? Because different rules apply to them, and I can't see guidance anywhere. We'll see what we can find out for you. And this person says, what's going to stop red zone COVID inhabitants from travelling into orange zones for less restricted holidays? I don't get it. Well, nothing's going to stop them, because on the 15th of December, where the border opens for Auckland, a betting person would say they are going to travel to the orange centres. On Rhythm and Vines, this person says barely anyone in Gisborne sees a financial benefit from R&V. Most locals find it frustrating and bothersome. Cancel it, they say. And it's not just Rhythm and Vines that can't happen at Red. There's also Northern Base in Mangawhai, we're told.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, I'm Evie Ashton. The government is defending its decision to start Auckland in the strictest setting of the new traffic light system. North Island towns and cities will be a mix of red or orange under the new COVID-19 protection framework, while the whole of the South Island will be orange. The Auckland region's 3 DHBs are reporting vaccination rates in excess of 86%, higher than other areas that will start the new system under a looser orange setting. Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson has told Checkpoint that Auckland's high number of COVID cases has to be factored in.
And obviously we have a significant outbreak in Auckland, and therefore that is part of our thinking to see how that outbreak goes. We appear to have plateaued in the cases, but we want to lock in those gains. And so it's not just the vaccination rate.
Grant Robertson says Aucklanders who are double vaccinated will feel significantly freer under the red setting, which is similar to the current level 2 lockdown. And the areas operating under the red light will be Northland, Auckland, Taupo and Rotorua Lakes districts, Kawerau, Whakatane or Portiki districts, Gisborne district, Wairoa district, Rangitike, Whanganui and Ruapehu districts. The rest of the North Island and the South Island will be at orange. Meanwhile, a new transition payment of up to $24,000 will be available to support businesses affected by the move to the COVID-19 traffic light system. The one-off payment will be activated through the Resurgence Support Payment System criteria and be available on December the 10th for businesses, particularly in Auckland, Waikato and Northland. Minister Grant Robertson says further targeted support will be considered once the new framework beds in. The police union is concerned that even routine policing is now a risky job. A man shot and injured 3 police officers before he was shot dead at a house in the West Auckland suburb of Glen Eden this morning. The Vice President of the Police Association, Mike McRandall, says data shows an average of 3 firearm incidents every day this year just in Auckland. He says the majority of frontline members think they should be armed.
Well, you can't call anything routine in modern policing these days. One of the most risky situations you go or get involved in every day. Police all around New Zealand are stopping vehicles for various reasons, but you just don't know what you're going to potentially get confronted with, and we're seeing so many firearms.
One of the 3 officers in hospital has serious injuries. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, says the new COVID-19 variant highlights why caution at the border is still needed. No cases of Omicron have been identified in this country yet, but the government has moved 9 countries into the very high-risk category, restricting travel from those countries to citizens only and requiring a full 14 days in MIQ. Ms Ardern says this demonstrates the risk at the border.
Some countries have had to close borders or stand up quarantine facilities again. We already had a strong system in place and the ability to move swiftly to make it stronger still.
Jacinda Ardern says Omicron does not change the advice on vaccine boosters, which are now available to anyone who had their second dose 6 months ago. Meanwhile, Australia's Chief Health Officer has told the public not to be alarmed at the discovery of the Omicron COVID variant across the Tasman. The ABC's Stephanie Boris has more.
A number of meetings will be held this week between health experts, the Prime Minister and Premiers about Omicron. So far, Australians are allowed to come home from South Africa and surrounding countries, but they must quarantine for a fortnight. Chief Health Officer Professor Paul Kelly has indicated more measures could be introduced depending on what scientists learn about the variant.
Alert, not alarmed.
Health Minister Greg Hunt has asked the vaccine advisory body known as ATAGI to look at whether booster shots should be given sooner given the current situation.
And the pandemic has forced the cancellation of a major summer sports event. The Wakaama New Zealand Board cited the uncertainty of the rollout of the traffic light system and its impact on Māori as one of the reasons they have cancelled the Wakaama 2022 Nationals. It will be the first time since the event started 32 years ago that it will not go ahead. The board says the safety of competitors and their supporters is paramount. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, another chapter in the story of Aotearoa hip-hop with Brad Warrington, a.k.a. DJ Sticky Fingers. Chapter 2 of the story of life on Earth looks at how earlier variants of it created the air we can breathe. And Jeffrey Donovan, who spoke to me in 2018 on his theories on the health benefits of urban trees. Looks like the evidence is backing him up. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel fine, apart from isolated afternoon showers inland. Waikato, Waitomo, Taumarunui, Taupo and Bay of Plenty, mainly fine today. Rain at times tomorrow. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay fine today, apart from isolated afternoon showers. Rain developing tomorrow with possible thunderstorms from afternoon. Taranaki and Taihapeta Wellington also waded upper. Mostly cloudy, areas of drizzle turning to rain tomorrow. Marlborough, Nelson and Bulla, cloudy periods, a few showers, especially inland. Canterbury coast and plains, fine today apart from areas of low cloud. Cloudy tomorrow with isolated showers. Canterbury High Country, Otago, Southland, Westland and Fiordland. Mainly fine, cloud increasing about eastern Otago and Southland tomorrow with isolated showers. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, a few showers this evening. It's 6 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Evie. No mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. It's a red December for large chunks of the upper North Island. Auckland, Northland, Taupo, Rotorua, Kawerau, Whakatane, Opotiki, Gisborne, Wairoa, Rangatike, Whanganui and Ruapehu all enter the new traffic light system at the red light. The rest of the country begin at the orange, meaning large events can go ahead and no limits for venues using the vaccine pass. But for those in the red zone, there are much stricter restrictions, including 100-person limits in bars and restaurants. Torben Landau from the 2 Mile Sailing Club in Taupo joins us now. So, Torben, red, what do you think of that?
Look, I think it was to be expected based on our DHB's vax rates, but still pretty upsetting to, in a sense, go backwards for the Taupo hospitality sector coming into our absolute busiest time.
Yeah, so how will it affect your business?
Look, obviously it gets reviewed on the 13th again, and we all have our fingers crossed that we go to orange because we need to have as many people coming into our venues as possible, and we're going to have the demand there to do it. So, look, we really, really hope that the government can see the pain that we're all going through and will take this into consideration and move us to orange as quick as possible.
Do you reckon that's a realistic wish, though? At 77%, I'm looking at double dosed in the Lakes District, pretty low. So you would have to really ramp up your numbers in order to get somewhere that gets you into orange.
Look, yeah, I mean, it's still one of the highest vax rates in the world. So I think that, that has to be taken into consideration hugely as well.
Do you reckon they should move you regardless? If you're still under 80%, you'd be comfortable?
100%. Look, we will have processes in place under this traffic light system to manage the vax passports. Everyone that will be in these venues will have to have a vax passport, so we don't understand why we can't go to orange immediately.
So what events do you have planned over the Christmas, New Year, summer period that potentially will be affected by the numbers limit in red?
Look, every Friday, Saturday we have live music. We've got a large venue on the edge of Lake Taupo, a very unique venue with a large capacity, well over 100 people. We have a signature New Year's Eve event that is sold out already, and just absolute significant problem towards our revenue if we start red going through till the 15th of January.
Torben, how many people are you expecting for the New Year's?
Look, we've got a large event, so we're looking well over 300 people.
Right, so if you don't go to orange, you're going to have to pull the pin.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to work out how we let 100 people come to that function.
And what does that mean for the money you've spent preparing? How much would you lose from that?
Oh look, there's sunk costs. We've booked acts. We've put a lot of time and effort and energy into marketing the event to have a sellout. Look, we're just not going to be able to recoup those costs unless the event goes ahead.
So how important are these summer months for you?
Look, the absolute most important period coming up, the 15th of December to the 15th of January, it doesn't get any bigger for Taupo. So absolutely the biggest revenue generation that the region, the area experiences.
You've got, as you say, a really unique venue, right? So, I mean, what percentage of your custom would be people sitting outside?
Some months, 75-80% of people will be sitting outside. We've got a large site. I'm looking at the picnic tables now. There's well over 1 metre spacing between our picnic tables, open air, wind blowing, and perfect tropical vibes.
So red really hurts then?
Extremely.
Really appreciate time. Best of luck for the review there. That's Torben Landl, who's from the 2 Mile Sailing Club in Taupo. A number of, events in jeopardy there if they don't get out of the red. The traffic light system has slammed the brakes on major summer festivals in various parts of the country. Some of the country's most popular holiday destinations are also the least vaccinated, and they'll face limited gathering sizes among other restrictions in the new COVID protection framework. That means event organisers who are counting on those big crowds face tough decisions over whether to pull the pin. Nita Blake-Person reports.
The summer sounds of Salmonella Dub and the headline act of the Bay of Islands Music Festival. In one of the country's most popular summer destinations, it's also one of the least vaccinated. The festival's prepped and ready to go at the end of January, but organiser Jackie Sanders needs Northland to be in the orange zone for the concert to get the green light.
Red traffic light means that we can't operate the festival. The restrictions to outdoor capacities make the event unviable, and that will be a shame because it's a huge draw card for locals, for tourists and to the region. We usually get between 4,000 and 5,000 people enjoying the Boy Music Festival, and it'll be a real shame to have to cancel it.
The end of January is a long way off in COVID times, and she's hopeful the situation will improve.
We'd hold on as long as we could, but probably a couple of weeks out we'd have to make a decision.
She's not the only one keeping a close eye on the alert levels. Northland, Auckland, Taupo, Rotorua Lakes, Kawerau, Whakatane, Opotiki, Gisborne and Wairoa districts, as well as the Rangatike, Whanganui and Ruapehu districts, all into the COVID protection framework at red this Friday. The rest of the country will be in orange.
There could be a lot of shows that just can't go ahead because of the vaccination situation and the fact that we're in red.
The president of the New Zealand Promoters Association, Brent Eccles, says he doesn't expect red zones will stay that way forever and believes concerts can go ahead safely.
What are those kids going to do? I mean, They're not going to sit at home watching TV with mum and dad. They're going to go and do something. We'd rather have them in a safe, controlled environment where people know their behaviours and be able to have summer like we know it.
But this summer is already shaping up to be very different to our classic Kiwi breaks. Concerts like Bay Dreams have already cancelled due to the uncertainty. Others, like Toast Martinborough, have been postponed. More than 1,500 people have signed a petition urging organisers of Gisborne's New Year's Eve Rhythm and Vines Festival to cancel the event, and Tairāwhiti iwi are also asking for it to be canned. Under the red light setting, events are restricted to up to 100 people based on 1 metre distancing. And Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says a new transition payment of up to $24,000 will soon be available for businesses, particularly those in Auckland, Waikato and Northland.
We recognise that we have set in place settings for the next 2 weeks. If they make a decision that they will be unable to go ahead, it is one of the reasons that we did put in place a transition support regime, knowing that this period is difficult for those festival organisers and knowing that they may need extra support as we go through this transition.
Organisers for Northern Base and Rhythm and Vines, two of the largest festivals in the red zones, could not be reached for comment this evening. They will no doubt be keeping a close eye on the next Cabinet announcement around traffic light settings on Monday, December 13th.
It is 14 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Australia is emerging from long lockdowns and border closures, but the pandemic has left many businesses with staff shortages. With unemployment relatively low at 5.2%, many sectors, including hospitality and technology, are calling for Australia to accelerate the return of workers from overseas. But with more than 700,000 Australians without a job, there are also calls for the government to boost domestic training programs. From Sydney, the BBC's Phil Mercer reports.
An economic recovery is back on the menu in Australia as its most populous states begin to bounce back from COVID-19 lockdowns. But for many businesses, there's a hitch.
Right now, this is the worst I've ever seen the labour shortage in the industry ever, by some considerable amount.
Neil Perry is one of Australia's most celebrated chefs. He believes the answer to the labour crunch is more immigration.
Right at the moment, we need more than ever to have people in the country that are bringing skills and desire to work in hospitality and tourism and other industries to make the place grow again.
All of Australia loves you and will never judge you.
You just need some space.
Australia closed its borders to most foreign nationals in March 2020. Legions of migrant workers were shut out. Tourism, hospitality and other sectors are counting down the days to when the fortress is finally dismantled. One company is so desperate for staff that it's offering to pay for recruits to fly to Australia. Paul Waterson, the chief executive of the Australian venue company, hopes the incentives will attract the people he needs.
What we're offering is contribution to the cost of the visa, flights, 4 weeks accommodation and $1,000 drinking and dining voucher when they arrive. So that's the equivalent of about $20,000 commitment that we would help to assist them coming over here.
When it comes to skilled workers, Australia is in a bit of a pickle.
But Peter Murphy, a federal Labor MP, believes that rather than relying on imported workers, Australia should improve the education and training of its domestic pool of talent.
Australia faces a skills shortage today, but we also face a shortage of skills that we need for tomorrow. Our skills system suffers from a lack of planning.
This is George and Tim, and if you believe these Sydney entrepreneurs, this is where our food, particularly meat of the future, will come from.
But some businesses simply can't flourish without overseas talent. At this startup in Sydney, brainiacs are in high demand. Vow is developing what could be a new type of carbon-neutral food, where meat is grown in the lab from animal cells. Tim Noakesmith, its co-founder, says he just needs more staff.
Getting people in is hard. Getting people excited about the mission is comparably easier, but getting people into the country can be extremely challenging. The global pandemic has not helped those efforts, but we have a lot of bureaucracy and red tape when it comes to getting the right people here in the country. And ultimately what we need is kind of some of the smartest people in the world across both cell biology, material scientists, and also engineering as well. Everything from autonomous vehicle backgrounds to fintech.
The highly anticipated trial of Ghislaine Maxwell begins in Manhattan tonight. She's being tried on several charges, including trafficking underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein to sexually abuse, which she denies. The ABC's Barbara Miller has more.
Your Excellencies, Presidents, Lords, ladies and gentlemen,
the daughter of a publishing magnate who died in mysterious circumstances, a socialite who associated with presidents and princes, a campaigner for the oceans.
My passion for the ocean started when I was a little girl. I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau on TV and became mesmerised.
Now finds herself in the headlines for very different reasons.
Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein are untouchable until it all came crashing down around them.
The death by apparent suicide of Ghislaine Maxwell's former partner, Jeffrey Epstein, in a jail cell in 2019 meant his many accusers never had their chance to see him in court. That's led Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers to argue she's being made a scapegoat for the disgraced financier. But Stephen Gillers, Professor of Legal Ethics at NYU School of Law, says he doesn't support the argument that Ms. Maxwell is facing trial by proxy.
She is accused of independent misconduct, unrelated to what he actually did. The accusations, to put it in lay language, is that she worked as a procurer of underage girls to travel across state lines to have sex with Epstein, and she knew what she was doing, and she groomed them. The government's position is that she made much of what he did possible.
The alleged crimes of helping Jeffrey Epstein groom, abuse and traffic underage girls took place between 1994 and 2004 in locations including New York, Palm Beach, Santa Fe and London. 4 women are expected to testify that they were the victims of the powerful pair. It's not known if the defendant will take the stand. Tiffany Jeffers is an associate professor at Georgetown University Law Centre and former prosecutor.
I think it's risky for defendants to testify, but, she also has resources to prep. She's been in the spotlight for a long time and is kind of used to being under pressure in that spotlight way. So the defense may think it's a good strategy to put her up.
The trial is expected to last 6 weeks.
The EU's border agency will start sending planes to keep an eye on the French coast and stem the number of migrants trying to cross the Channel to the UK. France says it wants to work with the UK on migration, but that talks need to be serious. The British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, wants France to take back migrants who reach the UK. Here's the BBC's Lucy Williamson.
It's usually migrants arriving in Europe that prompts this kind of meeting. Today it was triggered by migrants who were leaving the EU. 27 people died in the Channel on Wednesday trying to reach the UK. Opening the meeting, France's Interior Minister called for a common fight against people smugglers. He was also heard admitting that the relationship with the UK was not easy, but it's necessary, he said. Our geography means we have to get along with our British friends. There was one glaring absence from this meeting. The Home Secretary had her invitation revoked after President Emmanuel Macron said the British government wasn't serious. He was reacting to a letter published on Twitter by Boris Johnson, calling for joint patrols with French forces and the ability to send migrants straight back to France. After the meeting, France's Interior Minister had this to say.
This meeting wasn't anti-English, it was pro-European, and we must work with our British friends.
France says it's now a frontline state for the EU when it comes to migration. People smuggling networks are known to operate across borders here, and the government says more than half the people camped in Calais have come from Belgium. In Rome today, Pope Francis expressed his sadness at the deaths this week and urged governments to keep talking.
I renew my heartfelt appeal to those who can help resolve these problems, especially civilian and military authorities, so that understanding and dialogue can prevail over exploitation, and so that they direct their efforts towards solutions that respect the humanity of these people.
In Folkestone, people gathered to remember those who died on the narrow strip of sea that separates them from France. British politicians liked to say during Brexit negotiations that the UK wasn't leaving Europe, just leaving the EU. What that distinction means for managing cross-channel migration is still being hammered out.
The new COVID-19 variant, known as Omicron, continues to spread in Europe, and it's made its way into the heart of London. The ABC's Nick Dole reports.
As news of the variant was spreading around the world last week, 2 flights from South Africa with more than 600 passengers on board landed in Amsterdam. Authorities decided to quarantine and test the lot of them, and 1 in 10 returned a positive COVID result. After analysing the positive samples, Dutch scientists say they've found 13 cases of Omicron. The UK also had flights land from Southern Africa last Friday, but in a TV interview with the BBC, the Health Secretary Sajid Javid admitted some were allowed into the community.
How did they get home from the airport?
Well, they would have got home in the normal way, but
on
really the speed at which we worked, it is just not possible to go any faster than that.
Sajid Javid says all recent arrivals from Southern Africa have been contacted and asked to isolate and get tested, but a 3rd case has now been detected here. Authorities say the individual had links with Southern African travel and they'd spent time in the busy Westminster region of central London before leaving the country. While precise genomic sequencing is time-consuming, the Health Secretary says suspected new cases will show up quickly because Omicron possesses the so-called S-gene dropout. It's a characteristic that PCR tests can pick up easily, so it can be used as a kind of proxy.
Both the government labs and other private labs, they will all be required to do the S-gene dropout test on every test,
okay.
and that result would come very, very swiftly.
While it's still not clear exactly how effective existing vaccines will be against Omicron, manufacturers are already working to update them. Dr. Paul Burton is the Chief Medical Officer at Moderna.
We've mobilised hundreds of people here in the US and around the world. We started that really early on Thursday, on Thanksgiving Day. We should know about the ability of the current vaccine to provide protection in the next couple of weeks. But the remarkable thing about the mRNA vaccine is that we can move very fast. If we have to make a brand new vaccine, I think that's going to be early 2022 before that's really going to be available in large quantities.
While the Omicron variant does appear to be highly transmissible, there are at least some positive signs coming from South Africa, where it was first observed. Dr. Angelique Coetzee is a doctor from Pretoria. She was one of the first to report a pattern of symptoms in her patients that helped trigger an investigation into the variant. She says those symptoms didn't appear to be serious.
And he's got this body aches and pain with a bit of a headache. Not really a sore throat, more a scratchy type of description, and no cough and no loss of smell or taste. What we are seeing clinically in South Africa, and remember I'm at the epicenter, that's where I'm practicing, is extremely mild. For us, that's mild cases. We haven't admitted anyone. I spoke to other colleagues of mine, the same picture.
And the whole world will be hoping that picture doesn't change.
One of the most fascinating trials in recent American history is underway. Elizabeth Holmes, once the youngest self-made female billionaire and an icon of Silicon Valley, is charged with 11 counts of fraud. Camilla Burnell reports.
More people will have access to their own health information.
With her distinctive deep voice, Elizabeth Holmes taking the stand. Over 3 days of testimony, Holmes tried to explain her actions and regrets at her now dissolved blood testing company, Theranos.
So this is the little tubes that we collect the samples in.
Needing just a few drops of blood, the startup, once valued at $9 billion, promised a wide range of tests, claiming to revolutionize healthcare.
We call them the nanotainer, and they're about this big.
But for 11 weeks, prosecutors in her criminal trial have argued Holmes out of time and out of money lied. She faces 11 federal fraud charges over allegations that she knowingly misled investors, doctors, and patients. The 37-year-old has pleaded not guilty. Once known as the richest self-made woman, Holmes captured the attention and money of powerful and wealthy investors. Overall, Holmes raised $945 million, in part thanks to her charisma.
She's kind of has her head tilted. She's very engaged. She's frequently smiling, making eye contact with her attorney who's asking her the questions, and occasionally looking over at the jurors, to kind of explain to them how the technology worked.
To England, where more than 60 people have been stuck in a pub for 3 days after it was cut off by heavy snow. Could it be that bad? The BBC's Terry Egan reports.
It could well be the kind of thing a lot of people have on their bucket lists, a 3-day lock-in in Britain's highest pub. Indeed, at least one patron who stopped off for a quick one has said it was so nice she didn't want to leave. She and about 60 others, though, are stuck, if that's the right word, for the third night in a row now in a remote 17th century establishment, the Tan Hill Inn, in the north of England, trapped by heavy snow and blizzards. The customers have been maintaining their morale with meals and no Oasis, who also happened to be stranded there with them. The pub's manager, Nicola Townsend, confirmed that everyone was keeping their spirits up.
Everyone's gelled together really well. There's new friendships being formed. We've been having quizzes, karaoke's. Our chef's been looking after everybody, cooking loads of really good food, and people have been playing games, just having a really good time. We are having a bit of a party, aren't we?
And considering the customers have been sleeping on the bar floor in makeshift beds, all in all, it must be quite a sleepover.
Before we head off this from Lynn, summer festivals, blah, 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 blah. No grizzling from the likes of the team who organised the Burt Munro Challenge, cancelled earlier this month with grace and safety in mind. Sick of the festivals moaning, to be honest, says Lynn. Motorcyclists with no events in the new year because of COVID. Thanks for getting in touch. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi pōpō tomorrow from 5 a.m. Hidden costs of travelling in a pandemic. First up looks at how much COVID tests cost and travel insurance.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The country's new COVID-19 traffic light system comes into force from Friday. Northland, Auckland, Taupo and Rotorua Lakes districts, Kawerau, Whakatane, Opotiki, Gisborne, Wairoa, Rangatike, Whanganui and Ruapehu districts will be red. The rest of the North Island and the whole of the South Island will be orange. Cabinet will review the settings on Monday, December the 13th. The government has also announced a one-off transition payment of up to $24,000.